Hello everyone and welcome back to session 10, our final session of this 3-day event. We're so glad to have you here. If this is the first session that you're joining for, please know that you can ask questions of our speakers via the questions section of the control panel that you'll find, and they'll come through to our speakers at the end of the session when we have a group question and answer component of our session. My name is Mia Cobb. I'm based at the Animal Welfare Science Centre at the University of Melbourne, and it is my pleasure to be chairing this final session that is looking at companion animal welfare, but through the lens of animal owner experience or animal caretaker experience. So I'm very excited to introduce our speakers, and our first presentation comes from Ana Goncalves Costa from the University of Adelaide, Australia, and their presentation is titled The Good, the Bad, the Helpful, Lived Experience of Raising a Puppy for Companionship. I'll leave it to Kat to press the magic button and see you after this presentation.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for logging into my talk. Today I'm going to be having a chat to you about the good, the bad and the helpful, the lived experience of raising a puppy for companionship. I figure it might be good for me to give you a bit of background on myself to start off with. It is important, I think, if you're going to listen to someone, you should probably know who that person actually is. So my name is Anna, and I am currently completing my PhD at the University of Adelaide in South Australia. So I'm set to complete my PhD mid to late next year, and my interest during this time has very much been in puppy development and puppy raising. And before coming back to uni for my PhD, I was a Delta trained force-free dog trainer. I am also part of the Animal Behaviour, Welfare and Anthrozoology Lab at Adelaide Uni. So if you've got some time, please do come and check us out. Okay, so let's talk about puppies. So I'm from Australia, and I do believe we actually have the highest rates of dogs per household in the world. If not the highest, at least definitely one of them. So over here, almost half of all our households has at least one dog as a resident. So Australians actually have a really big demand for puppies. So almost 500,000 of us become new puppy owners every year. Now, if you are from a bigger country like the US, that probably doesn't sound like a lot. But in Australia, we have a population of about 25 million. So to give you a bit more context, only 300,000 of us bring home a new baby every year. So we clearly prefer a puppy to a baby. And like a lot of other places in the world, COVID did see us go a little bit more nuts for dogs than usual. And so I think that the number is actually that 1 in 4 dogs currently in Australia was acquired during the pandemic. But no matter when or what prompts us to acquire a dog, 60% of Australians consider dogs members of the family. A quarter of us will factor in for them and plan for them to join us on family holidays. So, I mean, really, culturally, Australians think of their dogs more than just pets. They are a really big part of our lives. And considering, you know, in Australia alone, that there are 500,000 of us every 12 months having that experience of raising a puppy, this really is an experience that we share as a community. And yet it's something that we really rarely research. We tend to focus a lot on the puppy, and we forget about the other end of the leash, the guardian. And that's what we're going to look at today. So I know that we're here to talk about animal welfare, and normally that does mean, again, looking at the animal part of the equation, and obviously that's really important. But I think we do need to talk about that other end of the leash. We do need to talk about our guardians. You know, our dogs, and in this case today, our puppies, they are 100% reliant on us to raise and care for their welfare. So that's where my interest has come in, and that's where this study will come in as well. So what we've done, so me and my team, we have designed a mostly qualitative longitudinal study. So what we've done, let me grab one of these so if you can see that. We've recruited a total of 20 participants. All of our recruits were recruited pre-puppy acquisition, so before they got the puppy. So they had committed to bringing home a new dog, but they hadn't actually brought one home yet. And what we did, we set up and chatted to these participants one-on-one about how they were feeling. So we did a phone call, and we learnt about how they were preparing for their new puppy, usually around 7 days prior to bringing their dog home. So the arrival date was really nearing. And then we interviewed them a second time, 7 days after their puppy arrival. So this is when the puppy arrived, and then we did another interview there. We did a final interview at 6 months of age. So we really wanted to capture, what has this entire journey been like? But because this is quite a big gap between 1 week in and 4 months on, we also did let me just get it to come up. We also did some surveys. So every 2 weeks after that second interview, we asked all of our participants, how is it going? What are you really enjoying? What have you found really challenging? What have you found really helpful? So we kept track of these surveys, and it's these surveys that we're going to talk about today. So out of that, we've got about 120 surveys worth of data. And just to state here, so what this particular talk is currently in review of the journal as a paper, but it's not quite published yet, but it's on its way. So you can think of today as a little sneaky peek. Okay, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the results, let's just have a quick squiz at the participants that we got. So we had 20 participants. They were all from Australia, mostly from the East Coast and South Australia. They were all women, which is common for these type of studies. Most of our participants were between 30 and 46 years of age, although we did have some older and some younger than that. About a third were first-time puppy owners. So these were people that had never had a dog or a puppy as an adult. So this entire experience was going to be brand new for them. Breeds. So let's start with what we found. So I think a really good place to just give you an idea of what we saw is to start off by giving you a visual representation of what it might be like to raise a puppy. So in these surveys that we took, every 2 weeks, we asked our participants from 0 to 100, how much do you agree with the following statement? Caring for my puppy sometimes takes more time and effort than I have to give. And this is what we found. So each of these lines represent a different participant. And so these are the lines of participants, so you can see the legend there. And this is the scores that they reported over time. So over time, each of their surveys 1 to 8. So for example, we've got this blue line here that does a little bit of a whoop up and down, a bit of a journey for that participant. I think this graph is really interesting because I think the takeaway is that, yeah, people's experiences of puppy raising really differ. Some don't find it particularly hard, or at least they appear to have a lot of resources, a lot of capacity to give to the puppy. Some find it quite consistently difficult. Now, we couldn't see any patterns in what made these lines go up and what made these lines go down. So that is actually something that we're going to be looking at our next study, which we're just started. So maybe stay tuned for that one, and we'll let you know at the next conference what we find. Okay, so another question we asked was from 0 to 100, how much do you agree with the following statement? I am enjoying raising my puppy. Okay, so despite a lot of ups and downs in the last graph, most people actually really enjoy the process of puppy raising. So even the person who enjoys it the least down here, I mean, this is still really quite high ranking, all things considered. They're in the 70s. That's not considered, I wouldn't consider that low at all. That generally they're still having fun. And then finally, here is the graph for the question, I sometimes regret getting my puppy. Again, 0 to 100, as you can see here. Now, everyone generally enjoyed raising their puppy, and we had a bit of an up and down on their capacity. And here we have most people didn't ever seem to regret getting their puppy, and a couple did, and it went a little bit up and down. So this person here, this is participant 8 again. This was the person who had the lowest level of enjoyment. Again, it wasn't particularly low, but it was the lowest, and they regretted probably the most out of all of our participants. Now, as I said earlier, it's actually probably a little unfair to show you these graphs because I'm not going to have the answers to all the questions that I'm sure you've already thought of. We don't know what the links are between these lines and these graphs. The data that we collected didn't seem to capture anything that seems to kind of predict what these lines will do. So again, that is something that we're exploring in our next study, so you'll have to hang out for that one. Okay, so let's look at what we actually did find. So other than what I just showed you on the graphs, which was all about quantitative, everything else we asked was qualitative. So we asked our participants directly, what did you find most enjoyable over the last 2 weeks raising your puppy? What did you find most challenging? What did you find most helpful? So what we've done is when we've arranged this data into themes, as you do, and what we found is most enjoyable was for our participants was that journey from strangers to family. So they really enjoyed bonding with their puppy, having those shared experiences, having moments of affection, of seeing that bond and that relationship grow very specifically. That is what was easily the most enjoyable for our participants. Secondly was a sense of achievement. So seeing their puppy grow up happy and healthy, seeing their puppy learn, how to sit, how to use the doggy door, how to walk on a lead. There was a real sense of pride with their puppies, and that really helped people. That was one of those two things of that pride with or being proud of your puppy and of yourself, I suppose, by extension, and forming that bond with them was a really big part of what made puppy raising incredibly enjoyable for our participants. Most challenging, unsurprisingly, was training and behaviour. So these challenges could be real typical puppy stuff, so that the teething stages, toilet training, having to teach them to walk on a lead, teaching them to do the real basics and what kind of behaviours are appropriate and inappropriate according to us as the humans in their lives, and helping them navigate the world. That was really, really difficult. But what was also difficult was feeling like you're being a good guardian. So our participants really struggled with a lot of, their words, mother's guilt, where they felt that, am I doing enough? Is this right? Could I be doing better? Am I doing a good job raising my puppy? This was really important to our participants. And what they found most helpful was, again, unsurprisingly, the training. So, we can see that the more training and socialization that they can give their puppy, it probably decreased that challenges of the training and behavior challenges. And they also found a village really helpful. So having a range of people, professional and non-professional, to help them raise this puppy. They found access to material physical assets important. So access to a beach, a park, treats, toys, and having appropriate expectations, attitudes, even, so for example, participants who said things like, look, I know this is tough, but this is temporary, that expectation that this is temporary, that's okay, or yes, I know I can meet this challenge, it's fine. That was really, really big for our participants, and they found that incredibly helpful. We don't have time to talk about all of our themes that we found, but I just want to talk about one. So our cohort really gave credence to the saying, it takes a village. Our participants leaned on and received support from their friends and family, both within and outside the household, as well as from paid professionals. And this is one of the areas of puppy raising where we really can see clear parallels with human child raising. With humans and parenting, we know that we get a decrease in stress and negative states when you increase the help and sharing of child raising responsibilities with others. And that is definitely what we saw in our cohort. Our participants used their village as a source of emotional and physical support. someone to share the workload with. Many of our participants used friends and families to puppy sit so they could take a break from puppy life or attend a human-only social event without the feeling of guilt that they're leaving their puppy alone. And so villages are also a really good source of guidance and information. So our participants use these networks to reach out for help. Other dog owners, any connections to trainers or vets and vet nurses that they had was used. And this village also then helped increase our participants' self-efficacy. So, they received verbal support from others, again, that emotional support, or they watched and learned from others' experiences. And as a final point, we are going to run out of time. These villages can be in person or they can be digital, and there is certainly no bigger village than the internet. Now, I know I've gone over time, so I'm going to do this really quick. As a takeaway, I want you guys to remember that guardians don't raise puppies, villages raise puppies. And if we're going to go and say that welfare is important to us, then we also need to make sure we set an environment up that is good for our animals' welfare, and that is taking care of those that take care of our animals, and that means our guardians. So having a supportive and appropriate village may help increase animal welfare for our puppies and dogs, and I think that's something certainly worth exploring further. Thank you so much. I have popped my email address there if you want to ask me any questions via email. Otherwise, I'll see you in questions in just a moment. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was a great presentation. I look forward to sending some questions your way in the discussion after we hear from Rutu. But it's now my pleasure to introduce a colleague of mine from the Animal Welfare Science Centre at the University of Melbourne here in Australia. That's Rutu Galea. She's going to be presenting about risk factors associated with feather damaging behaviour in companion parrots, looking at the owner's perspective. Be back with questions just after this. A reminder, you can put any questions for our speakers through the control panel in the question section there. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung people as the custodians of the land from which I'm presenting today. I would like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'm a research assistant and a PhD student at the Animal Welfare Science Centre, the University of Melbourne. In my spare time, I also supervise small research projects. Today, I'm going to give you a snapshot of one such research project that looked at owners' perspective on the risk factors associated with feather damaging behavior in companion parrots. This project was part of a master's research that was conducted by Adrian and supervised by Lauren and myself. This project is particularly close to my heart as it is a research topic that does not get as much attention as it deserves. Companion parrots are the fourth most common species of pets in Australia. More than 40% of the species of parrots in wild have either threatened or highly threatened conservation status. In 2020, World Parrot Trust reported that the number of captive population of parrots equals to their wild counterparts. In Australia alone, the companion parrot ownership was at 868 households in 2019. This number increased to 1,384 in 2021. Even though companion parrots are common companion animals, some species such as cockatiels adapt well to captive environments, whereas other more intelligent species such as African grey struggle in captivity. In wild, most parrot species are highly social. However, social complexity experienced by wild conspecifics are not always replicated in captive environment. In domestic environment, parrots often have little to no interaction with their conspecifics. Furthermore, parrots in wild often spend up to 70% of their active time foraging, often performing complex tasks to gain access to feed. In contrast, the companion parrots have spatial restrictions, with feed available without having to work for it. Recent studies have shown that some species of parrots, such as blue and yellow macaws, are more intelligent than rhesus monkey. For such large-brained parrots to thrive in captivity, they need to be provided with more cognitively challenging environment. Companion parrots housed under barren conditions often display abnormal stereotypic behaviors indicative of poor welfare state. These stereotypic behaviors range from whole body form, such as route tracing, to oral stereotypies such as bar biting and feather damaging behavior. Feather damaging behavior often begins with feather picking, whereby they may chew their own feathers or those of the conspecifics, to a more severe form that involves trauma to the skin and underlying structures. Feather damaging behavior is the most common welfare concerns in companion parrots. Almost 16% of all the captive parrots display some form of feather damaging behavior. Although feather damaging behavior is the most common presentation amongst companion parrots in the veterinary clinics, very little is known about the motivation behind such behavior. One of the most commonly accepted theories behind the feather damaging behavior is that it is a redirected foraging behavior. Birds are highly motivated to perform foraging behavior. Lack of appropriate foraging opportunities in barren environment may cause them to redirect such behavior towards the feathers or those of their conspecific. Another theory that is proposed in literature is that the feather damaging behavior is a coping mechanism for birds experiencing negative welfare state, such as boredom and stress caused by barren environment and social isolation. However, most recently proposed and acknowledged theory is that management of companion parrots play a big role in their behavior and development of feather damaging behavior. As more exotic parrots with higher cognitive abilities are domesticated, it is critical for us to understand their cognitive needs and manage them accordingly. One of our first research in this area was a video mining study where we looked at the environmental risk factors for feather damaging behavior using videos that were posted by parrot owners on YouTube. Although we found some really interesting results, they were more focused in the North American region, as that's where the videos had originated. We wanted to gain a better understanding of the risk factors for feather damaging behavior in Australian context. Also, due to the timing of data collection, we wanted to investigate changes in the owner-parrot interactions during the COVID-19 lockdown in Australia, and also look at the effects of such changes to the interaction on parrot behavior, in particular to the feather damaging behavior. So to answer our research questions, we aimed to understand owners' perspective on the feather damaging behavior in companion parrots in Australia. We also aimed to evaluate owners' understanding of the severity of feather damaging behavior in their companion parrots, and to assess the effects of COVID-19 restrictions on overall owner-parrot interactions, and in particular changes to the feather damaging behavior. To address our research aims, we designed a survey that had three different components with 68 questions in total. The first section was understanding owner characteristics such as gender, the number of people in their households, the number of companion parrots they own, and also presence of other companion animals in the household. The second section aimed at understanding the parrot characteristics such as the sex, age, species, their rearing history, and whether they displayed feather damaging behavior. And finally, the management characteristics such as whether they house the parrot on their own or whether they were housed with other conspecifics, the location of the cage in the household, whether it was close to a door or close to a wall or window, whether they had access to their enrichment, the type of feed that they were given, whether they were presented it simply or whether they had to work towards getting the feed, the interactions during COVID-19 lockdown, whether there was changes to the duration of the time they spent, and also the behavior of parrot in response to the changes in that interaction during the COVID-19 lockdown period. In particular, changes to the feather damaging behavior during that period. Our survey participants were the companion parrots and their owners within Australia. We included people from all demographics and all household structures. We also included companion parrots that were healthy or the ones that displayed feather damaging behavior. To try and gain a more accurate picture of the parrots, we excluded the surveys that were completed by people that were not the primary caretakers of a companion parrot. The survey questions were uploaded on Qualtrics. We created a link to the Qualtrics survey, and this link was posted on social media, and also the ad was put in the newsletter for our university, as well as any Facebook group that were dedicated to the parrot owners, and we also sent emails to avian veterinary clinics. When we look at our results on the owner characteristics, we found that 93% of our survey respondents were female, and interestingly, most of them had belonged to larger households, and also most of them had over 6 parrots, showing that they were dedicated parrot owners rather than hobbyists. And majority of them also had other companion animals within the household. We had equal number of male and female parrots in our study. Large proportion of the parrots enrolled in our study belonged to younger age groups of 1 to 5 years of age. Cockatiels and budgies were more common species found in our study, and in contrast to our previous study, we did not have many households with more exotic parrots. Also, 19.6% of our parrots participating in our study were reported to display feather damaging behavior. Interestingly, all the parrots with feather damaging behavior had female owners as their primary caretakers, and they had greater interaction with their parrots even before pandemic. This is similar to some of the previous findings that we've reported. Interestingly, also, 82% of the parrots with feather damaging behavior were male. This is contradictory to some of the published empirical data that has shown that feather damaging behavior is higher in female birds. Also not surprising is that cockatiel formed the highest species of birds with feather damaging behavior, as they were also the most common species in our study. But what is worth noting is that although a small proportion of household had more cognitively intelligent species of parrots, such as the eclectus or the African grey, 13% of them displayed feather damaging behavior. And about 50% of the parrots that displayed feather damaging behavior were bred by their owners from their own parrots. 75% of the survey respondents have reported to have increased interaction with their parrots during the pandemic lockdowns, with nearly 58% of the companion parrot owners reporting that they've either seen an increase or a decrease in feather damaging behavior displayed by their parrots in response to that increased interaction. 14% reported no change in feather damaging behavior, and 29% of the respondents were not sure. In conclusion, we gained an interesting insight into parrot ownership in Australia. We also gained a good understanding of the changes in owner-parrot interactions during the COVID-19 lockdown. However, our study was confounded by smaller sample size and convenient sampling. The choice of posting our survey ads on parrot owner Facebook group pages and also avian vet clinics meant that we were targeting only more serious parrot owners. We would like to continue recruiting more participants to be able to conduct a meaningful statistical analysis on our data. And also larger sample size would also help us do more qualitative analysis of the descriptive responses provided by the parrot owners. We would also like to advertise more widely to capture parrot owners with smaller number of parrots and with varying degree of experience in owning a parrot. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Fantastic. If I can just invite both Ana and Rutu to please turn on their cameras and their audio so we can start our question and answer session. Great. Wow, full set. Well done, guys. It is the end of an amazing 3 days, and I'm so glad to have you both here for our final question and answer session. I think I'm going to start with you, Ana. We've had a question come through from Laurel asking, or sort of saying, I can't help but wonder if the lowest scoring participants for enjoyment and the highest for regret is more of a reflection of mismatch between puppy breed and owner lifestyle, and whether you might be exploring that in your future studies.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Just checking you guys, everyone can hear me before I continue. Yes, perfect.
Loud.
Yes, that is an excellent question. In our next study, what we actually think from what we saw, because this study was qualitative or mostly qualitative, and what we actually we're looking at our next study is the perceived social support. We think that actually might be more of what's going on rather than a mismatch between breed and lifestyle. Of course, breed, I'm sure, still plays some sort of role, but we don't know what that is. But we did get some suggestions that, especially when our participants struggled where all the work was on them, even though they may have had other people in the household who could have, in theory, have helped out, or when they struggled to be able to leave the house because they felt guilty that the puppy was at home, be there for 3 hours if they went out for dinner, but they didn't want to miss the dinner because it was their friend's birthday. I do think that perceived social support may actually be maybe the missing link of data that we're missing from that. But I will let you know if you give me about 12 months. I'll get back to you.
Well, hopefully we can repeat this event and have you report back later on. That would be ideal. And I guess also, you know, it's always important to consider that dogs are all individuals too, and it's not necessarily a matter of breed, but getting the right individual for the circumstances. And we can't always predict that with puppies, can we? So,
absolutely. And now, sorry, I was going to say in our next study, we're looking at perceived social support, the guardian's personality and the puppy's personality, as well as their kind of their confidence as well. So see how that all kind of goes in, because that was what was maybe suggested in that first study.
Fantastic. And then Rutu, coming to you, I may have missed if you explained this at the beginning, but I'm just wondering whether our understanding of feather damaging behaviour is, I guess, kind of, I don't know, I'm thinking of other animals that display what we may have thought of previously as stereotypical behaviours, you know, these kind of recurrent behaviours that didn't serve an apparent purpose, but now we understand that they serve a function in helping the animals cope when perhaps environments aren't as suitable as they could be. Is there any physiological data to suggest that, you know, the feather damaging behaviour serves some functional purpose for parrots in this way?
No, unfortunately, not just feather damaging behavior, just stereotypic behaviors in general. Like we did a project on sham chewing in pigs, and again, there's very limited information out there and there's very limited funding available, so hence not a lot of research done on that issue. Because I think overall it's perhaps serves a purpose, but it doesn't seem to have any further negative effects unless it's severe feather damaging behavior where there's tissue injuries. Other than that, I think if it's mild symptoms, then probably they don't see, at least the owners don't seem to think that there is any negative effect on the welfare. But it obviously there's something in their environment that's not suitable.
Yeah, no, that's great. I guess this is actually a couple of questions I'm pulling together here, but again, for you, Rutu, to respond to, similarly to how zoos are currently revisiting which species are actually suited to retaining in captivity, and question marks being raised about questions like tigers and elephants and whether they're suited long term to being kept in those kind of environments. Do you think the problematic nature of meeting the needs, and particularly for the long life of some of these parrots, like the African greys or the cockatoos, means that we just shouldn't be allowed to keep them as companions?
I don't know how easy that is to implement in practice, especially like the numbers that we see in Australia of these big exotic birds are quite low. From the previous study that we did, even though it was just video mining, so many people had posted videos, and most of them were like African grey, macaws, eclectus, those birds that we don't know little about. And if you look at their setups, it's exactly the same toys that they give or material to play with. It's exactly the same between cockatiel and African grey, for example, which is perhaps not suitable. So I think that there's a combination of things that need to happen. We did, in our previous study, we had healthy birds, healthy African greys that had no feather damaging behavior. But if you look at the things that the owners were doing to manage them, was quite extensive, not just providing them with wooden toys that don't work for them. So I think it's a combination of things, perhaps trying to understand how to manage them better. And if we find that we have large sample size of those kind of studies, then perhaps, and if we still find they're not coping well, then maybe we shouldn't be keeping them in smaller spaces.
Is the link to your parrot survey still live at all, Rutu?
I think so, yes.
Maybe you can pop it into the chat to all speakers, because we've had an inquiry come through asking whether it's still available for participation.
Oh, yeah.
And if you can't, maybe you can put it on your Twitter and people can find you there.
Yeah.
While you're doing that, I'll ask Anna a question. Anna,
Yeah.
I was struck when you showed the ratings of the different guardians' perceptions, just how much variation there was between individuals. It reminded me a lot of when I was looking at cortisol responses of guide dogs to entering kennels. There's a lot of variation, and often if we're just reporting on a group mean, we're undermining that individual experience. And I think that speaks to the importance of qualitative research like you did, where you're getting more of that feedback in personal individual terms, and then identifying the broader themes and doing that kind of thematic analysis. But what I wanted to ask you, I guess, with both human and animal focused studies, can you think of other things that we can do, other strategies we can apply to help capture those individual experiences in our research?
Yeah, so I've actually been thinking about the exact same thing, Mia, over the last few years. So for me, I think that when we look at our relationship with our animals, with animal welfare, and when we look at the experience of an individual animal, even, or an individual guardian, I've been really looking at it through a ecological model, because I think that we can't really make an assumption on what's happening with a single animal and then make assumptions on everything that's happening around that, because at the end of the day, every household is different, every individual is different. Even puppy classes that you go to are different, the vets you go to are different, the online communities you're part of, culture is different, which means, each of these things make a difference into that animal and humans experience at the end of the day. So I just have a paper at the moment that's going to be published really soon, using the Bronfenbrenner model for looking at puppy development. And I think that can sometimes, using a model like that can be really helpful when we're looking at
especially the individual's experience, because it does take into account the just huge complexity of what goes into an experience, you know, and a journey of puppy raising, or whether you're the dog in the equation or whether you are the human. So I think if we can, as a community, create really good systems that people can tap into, that might be a bit of a key of helping animal welfare in the long term in our community for dogs. But certainly, like, everyone's experience is so different. We cannot make generalized terms as much as I think we're used to doing. And that was very big in our study, for sure. I hope that answered your question.
I think that's true of animal experiences, right? They're all individuals. The way they're experiencing things are individual as well. And so I think if we can identify more research methods, and I know personally I've looked to human studies where they've looked at other subjective experience measures for things like pain. So one example I can think of is children with juvenile arthritis. And they identified that, you know, kids experience pain differently when they have this condition, and some are sort of low pain experiences and some are high pain experiences. And I mean, you could translate that across to puppies that are shy or bold, or, you know, enjoying, I don't know, better welfare or lower welfare, and how can we migrate one group to the other trajectory. Kind of within the population, there's subgroups that follow meaningful patterns. And they use different statistical techniques than we do traditionally within animal welfare science. And I'm very interested in sort of seeing whether we can apply this group-based trajectory analysis or latent class analysis in our field more. I think it would be useful as well for reporting on human experiences, not just animal ones. But yeah, it's, I guess, where we get this great interdisciplinary interaction, and we can, you know, expand our methods that we use and the measures as well. Thanks, Rutu. We got your question out there into the chat now, or your link rather, for your survey. We've got a question for both of you relating to your focal species, which is, what do your results mean for people that it might be considering acquiring a parrot? We'll start with, and then or a puppy for you, Ana. So we'll start with Rutu.
I think do your research is my main advice. Don't just buy the toys that are stock standard from a pet shop. I think that's the biggest advice I can give. There's quite a lot of blogs out there that give you, you know, advice on what to have, the size of the cage, the locations, and things like that. I think just do your research.
Yeah, mine quite similar. I also would recommend doing your research, but mostly I would actually recommend presume you're bringing home a baby. Almost all of our participants made comments around like, oh, it's just like having a kid again. You know, I completely forgot what it was like overnight with a baby, or it's been so long since I've had a baby in the house. Or alternatively, oh, I remember, yeah, I can do this. I did this with my kids. I can do it again. I think that we tend to presume puppies are kind of less work than they actually are, or we say, because obviously we interviewed our participants before they got the puppy, you know, what are you expecting? And everyone's like, oh, it's going to be hard. We know it's going to be hard. But I think that once they actually got the puppy, the reality of how hard that actually is, of especially supervision of their puppy, was a really big thing. You cannot just go and make dinner if your puppy is running amok around the house, because they will pee somewhere, they will chew something, they're going to get to something. You have to watch them all times. So for me, I think the biggest advice is, if you would have the time and energy to bring home a baby, I know not for quite as long as a baby would be, but a baby for at least a few months, that would be my biggest thing, is be prepared for it.
You have to forgive me for laughing. I think any parent out there is just like agreeing with you 100%. No one can quite explain the constancy of parenting until you're living it. And I don't know that naive people even want to understand. I think we like to think we'll be exceptional. Our experience will be easier or better or different. And that's probably why we sign up to these experiences over and over again.
Absolutely.
But that's great. I'm very conscious of time. We've got one final quick question from Laurel for you, Ana, about the change in phrasing from ownership or caretaker even to guardian, and could you give any rundown in the thinking of moving from this kind of framing of our relationship with dogs?
It's a really good question, and it's really timely, because I think this is something that a lot of us are thinking about now, and it's really hard to kind of actively make a choice on which word that we use. I think that the words that we use matter. You know, we know that from some studies that are in human healthcare. So depending on what words and phrases are used in the medical field, actually does change the health outcomes of patients and how they're treated and how much pain relief they're given, all these kind of things. So I think the words we use, A, matters, and therefore B, we really need to be careful of which ones we do use. The only reason I don't like owner is because I feel like it does sort of take away autonomy a little bit of, I like this is like a 4-hour talk, so I won't go into it, I promise. I'm so sorry, Kat, you're already like, finish up.
Maybe Laurel can reach out to you via LinkedIn or email or something like that to sort of catch up further. I agree that the way we talk about things changes the meaning that people take away from the things that we say, and that sort of framing of communication is so important. And it has been a real shift, I think, over the last 5 years to talk more about, rather than saying pets, talking about animals as companions, and also talking about acting as guardians for them rather than owners. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. I want to thank Rutu and Ana again for a wonderful session. You were heroes to carry it on just 2 shoulders rather than 3 like the other sessions have done. So thank you very much. And if you guys would like to switch off your cameras and microphones, Kat and I will close out the event.
I'd like to first start by thanking Mia for inviting me along to be her co-pilot for this event. It's been a fabulous experience. Thanks so much, Mia. Mia and I met at a conference, I think 7 years ago, and I'm so pleased that we've kept in touch since that first wonderful meeting. So this workshop has focused on controversies and collaboration with the aim of moving towards consensus in animal welfare. And I think Mia embodies collaboration so wonderfully. She's incredibly supportive. She's incredibly generous. Thanks so much for being you, Mia.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Kat, and thank you for agreeing to help with the workload associated with running an event. I know you hadn't done it before, and I hope you weren't too blindsided after you said yes. I think we also want to extend our thanks to the incredible support we've had from UFAW. They're all asleep right now because it's the middle of the night in the UK, but Hugh and Stephen and also Louisa have just been an incredible source of support in helping get this event up and running, communicating everyone through the millions of emails, and we're just incredibly grateful that they let this event become a thing. So here's hoping we get more of them ahead. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, and until we see you next time, Kat, what's the New Zealand word to say goodbye?
Yeah, so I think that a really good way that we can say goodbye is by using a really cool phrase that we use in our Māori language, which is mati wā, which means see you later, more than likely soon. And I think that's a perfect way to end our event. Mati wā.
Mati wā.